Welcome to Mondays, my friend. Thank you so much for starting your week with us as you do. This week, again, we're going to bring you another interview, and this one's a little bit different. We have an in-store retail marketing director, Matt Lasher, up from Buffalo, New York. Matt is someone who I followed for a long time. Really respect his message, really like his approach, and so I wanted to sort of share that with people. Plus, being up in the New York area, obviously he's got a few more restrictions or a few less. I mean, it's crazy to see the difference in what people are dealing with across the country. Matt's perspective is incredible. He uses the word empathy quite a bit. And I got to tell you, it really makes sense with how his company approaches things and sort of why he is the way he is. And he tells the whole story. So do me a favor, sit back, do your best to relax, and enjoy the next 40 minutes of wonderful, wonderful content from one of the brightest stars in the retail automotive space. Thank you so much and enjoy your week. Hello and welcome to another 5 minutes with Sean, maybe 10. Yes, we are still in quarantine editions, but today I'm joined by a special guest because he's never been on the show before, and he is a retail guy that I've been following for quite some time. I dig what he does. Matt, how are you today, man?
Doing great, Sean. Thanks for having me on, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you for coming on, bud. So, Matt, tell us real quickly, where do you work and kind of how did you get into your position, the 30,000-foot view of Matt's career?
Sure, man. I'm the director of marketing for the Herr Automotive Group. We're a 26-store group in Buffalo, New York, Buffalo, and Rochester. What's unique about us is the density with which we operate. We sell about 50,000 cars a year and service 400,000 cars a year, all within Western New York. We have about 2,000 employees, a little over that. My career started at Nissan North America, actually, out of college. So I had about 5 years of OEM sales and marketing experience, frontline consumer affairs type stuff. Quit that to sell T-shirts out of the trunk of my car and play poker for 2 years to pay my bills. And then I decided I want to get married and have kids and all that stuff. So I moved back to Buffalo, New York, where I'm from, and sold cars, did F&I. I was a used car manager for a couple of years, and I've been in this marketing role for the group for a little over 8 years now.
That's awesome, man. And you did it with such speed, too. I appreciate that. Just the highlights right there. That was wonderful, my friend. Let me go. I wrote them down as quickly as I could. So let's go backwards here. F&I, it's always a topic on my show. How long did you spend in F&I, and what was your overall feeling of it?
So F&I, at the time I did it, was Cash for Clunkers. If you remember that, 2008, 2009, whatever, or whenever that was, maybe 2010. That was a tough time. I didn't particularly enjoy F&I then. I was in the box for like 6 months, so not that long before I went to a used car role. It just happened to be some personnel shuffling that opened up an opportunity for me on the desk. But I wasn't that good at it, to be honest with you. I'd be better at it now. I think I've had a little more life experience, a little more, just with kids and home ownership and things of that nature that, would probably give me a little more credibility than like a baby-faced apple pie, like late 20s know-it-all that like, and I was at a Kia store too. So getting over that 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty was tough.
Yeah.
So, but it was my least favorite role. Selling cars was my most favorite because it was, you really develop true relationships with people, and you just have a lot of respect for the grind and the hustle of that particular profession.
I couldn't agree more with you, man. I spent the worst 8 months of my life in F&I. I'm just not an inside the box guy. It just drives me nuts to go to the same place, do almost the same thing every day. That's kind of felt like a desk job, so I just couldn't do it. But like you, my favorite job ever, having been a GM, part owner, none of that really compares to me to when I was selling cars. When I first got into this business and realized that this is something I could excel at and could create such deep personal relationships that would then benefit you outside of selling cars, right? I worked outside of Chicago. I sell a car to Brian Urlacher's brother. Next thing you know, I get a signed football from Brian Urlacher. It's just like, well, that's cool. I didn't realize that would be a proceed of it. So that side of it's really cool. Right now, so you're in a marketing role. Obviously, We've got a crazy time going on. What were kind of first steps for you, especially in the state of New York? What were the first steps for you in sort of trying to figure out how you continue forward? Because given your messaging online, I'm going to assume you didn't just yank 100% of ad spend and just close the doors and be like, all right, we're going to stop advertising, I assume. So kind of what went through your head as far as trying to figure out a plan for that?
So we went through a lot of interesting sort of gyrations, keeping up with the legislation and moving, shifting targets of what was allowed and what was not allowed has been a challenge over the last 30 days. We were more extreme than you would expect. We have a density and a brand reputation in our community that we don't view advertising as like mission critical, probably in terms of generating new customers and that sort of thing. So we've been in business 70 years. We try to do things the right way. When we screw up, we say we're sorry. We try to make people better than even. All the philanthropy and stuff that Scott Beeler, our owner, and other owners have participated with in the community. So, we have all this like strength of brand reputation and brand trust. So on the advertising side, though, that was more in step with our operation. So when we were told basically that we couldn't operate our showrooms. So in New York State, service was deemed essential. So we got to keep that business running, but our sales departments were deemed non-essential. So we had to shut the showrooms down completely. So we furloughed our entire variable team, basically, other than the general managers. So we had like 700 people furloughed, and real difficult decision. That wasn't something that anybody took lightly. Scott put in some measures to try to offset the benefits of the unemployment insurance or the unemployment benefits that people could collect by going in this furlough route. We tried to do a few extra things for our employees to help, make them, a little more whole. So we went through that, but as the sales departments came back online, so we can do remote selling, virtual transactions only with in-store delivery by appointment. So we've slowly ramped up our teams. We have skeleton crews now, but on Monday, we're bringing back our whole variable team. Some will still remain virtual, but we're bringing basically everybody back Monday. So we're going to be ramping back up. So the first marketing message we had to address was just telling people what was up. Like, the people didn't know. Like, so first it was service departments are open. We started with the positive. And by the way, just as a little aside, like, if any of our West Herb people see this, thanks to our fixed ops team who's been grinding and coming to work every day and doing the things and adjusting to the CDC protocols and all the cleaning things that have been required, just a remarkable effort from everybody on that side of the fence to keep things going, even in sort of a lower opportunity to earn income and that sort of thing. So they've done a great job. So tell people what's going on. Service is open. Sales, once we got to the virtual thing, we've communicated that. We don't have a digital retailing tool on our site, so we can get into that in a second if you want. I can sort of talk through that. But we are introducing on Monday a curbside delivery service. So we created some spots around the notion of taking delivery outside the dealership, curbside. This was really modeled after CarMax. I can't really give ourselves entire credit for this, but we think that it's a nice flexible option for somebody that has some concern about coming to the showroom. My opinion, though, inside the showroom is the most calm, pleasing experience you will ever see right this minute. We have delivery tables that are 8 feet apart. Customer sits at one end, manager sits at the other. It's taped off. There's Clorox wipes on the table. Like there's no noise, there's no 50 salespeople running around crazy. It's not like a rock concert in there. It's very peaceful. So for somebody like me, like an introvert like me, like I actually would prefer to take delivery in the showroom that way. And every customer that has taken advantage of that has really, really been appreciative of the efforts and all of that stuff. So we're spacing our appointments 1 per hour. We may change that or whatever, but right this minute, we built a custom delivery schedule system that's going to be able to, appoint customers on the hour. So we've been, modifying our operations that way. With respect to operations, though, because we unfurloughed everybody, that's what drove our advertising cancellations. We did cancel everything across the board, all digital, social, TV, radio, everything. It wasn't to save money. We felt like it was tone deaf to say what we were saying. We had all these default lease payments and other things created that were just like totally irrelevant now that COVID happened and people got laid off and like all these sort of non-empathetic positioning of come buy a car from us. So we turned all that stuff off. We've made some stuff recently, and we're going to try to sort of go back to market with the "we're here to help" message that seemingly every marketer is trying to go down right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough part of the road. And look, I mean, as far as that goes, one of our biggest groups, it's our biggest group actually here in Madison, Wisconsin, 17 stores, similar thing. They're like, look, we're just going to shut it all down. He actually shut all the stores down in entirety for 2 weeks and just said, look, we need to get a game plan. We need to make sure the messaging is correct and to make sure the showrooms are right and to make sure protocols are met. And I don't want people worrying about it. So just go home and let the executive team worry about it, and we'll figure it out. So I think there's a lot of great things that our industry, as it has since I've been in it 20 years, as it has since the day I started. It seems to come together when it has to, and it seems to everyone pull and kind of pull each other up, and this is really kind of one of those moments. But 70 years in your community, Matt, that's a big deal. And I want to kind of go back to it because you started with it. You don't view advertising as mission critical. And that's an interesting term, because I don't think most people listening to this that's not going to resonate with them, because I think they do. But your point is that because of not what you've done today and not what you've done in the last 6 months, but what you've done over the last 70 years has made the difference. And that culture and community is truly how you go about building a brand. Does that make your job easier, harder, or less or more exciting as a marketer? In your position, what does that do for your job every day when you go to work?
It's a million times easier. A million times. So we might not have the slickest campaigns. I see a lot of great examples. Walzer comes to mind as like a really good operator in terms of like creative execution for dealer advertising, and plenty of others across the country. But we don't have any slick why buy messages. We don't have, we're not doing every sort of gimmicky thing under the sun. It's really about execution. Our senior leadership team spends an inordinate amount of time thinking about the people that are in the chairs, and are they in the right seats? And are the teams doing what they need to be doing? Are we fulfilling our brand promise? And we care a lot about when we screw up, let's do something to make it right. So one little hack I'll give you guys, we use a tool called Delighted for Net Promoter Score surveying. So every transaction that happens, sales or service, connected by an API to the DMS, we send out on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend the Herr Auto Group to a friend? And anybody that gives us a score of 6 or less gets recontacted immediately to see what happened. How did we screw up? What did we do? And then we try to make it better, right? So this is really, it doesn't drive our Google reviews. It doesn't create, CSI scores, improvement. All it does is protect against negative word of mouth. So that's in our culture, and we've been doing that for, since 2013 or something now. So, and the coolest part about that, I don't usually normally even promote vendors this way, but I paid $250 a month for the whole group. We have a single account because I only care about the Herr brand as a whole. And can't beat that deal, right?
No, you cannot beat that deal. That's wonderful about that. And I'm all about working with people who fit your culture and what you do, as opposed to what I see all the time, which is people who are like, all right, well, let's go find a vendor and see if we can make what we do fit them, or vice versa. And it's like, no. Anyone we bring in better fit what we do off the get. That's why they're here, right? It can't just be here to make them fit. So curbside delivery, talk to me about what that's going to look like. Are you a ink to paper state? Does your state still require that, or are you able to get all digital signatures? How does that go on the?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest friction point for digital retailing is paperwork. It's not the calculators and the UI and the steps on the websites. It's
Correct.
Transactional paperwork problem. So we do require a ink signature on contracts. We're working through some e-contract initiatives with the various OEMs, but we represent 20 OEMs, and they have different opinions and guidance, and all these different lenders, captive lenders, and there's different approaches happening. So this is the biggest problem that we face, I think, with respect to digital retailing, and making that like a Rocket Mortgage type experience where you can really get things done within a handful of clicks or whatever. So we're working on some digital document storage stuff ourselves, just some custom things. But, so far I haven't seen too many super solutions. I know there are a lot of digital retailing tools exploring this space, but that's what I see to be the problem right this minute.
I would totally agree with you that in the DR space, it is something that, because obviously you mentioned it, you don't have it on your sites, or I don't know if when you say that, because I know you're big about the group site being kind of the site. You've talked about it before in your data sets. You've said, hey, this group site will see 2 point whatever, but these child sites will see X. When you say no digital retail, you mean across the company? No one has a digital retail piece on any of their sites?
So we did use a digital retailing tool for over a year, or about a year, around 2017. And what we learned through that experience was The engagement was like maybe 10% of traffic was engaging with the tools. But we got a lot of trade-in forms. What's my car worth, right? Which we've augmented that with, we use trade pending now, but so we're still getting that functionality. Credit apps were a big source of like final engagement, which we get that through, Route One and a mobile friendly credit app situation. The calculator parts themselves would get engaged with, but wouldn't often convert to a lead. And that was primarily, well, I think partly due to the fact that we don't price our new cars online outside of age new car inventory. Everything else is at MSRP, and we've done that intentionally because we do sell cars in showroom at MSRP still from time to time, and we wanted to do that with credibility. We didn't want to do it like, we didn't want to sell a car at MSRP in the showroom and then have the grandson call grandma and say, well, why didn't you get the $3,000 off that's online? They took advantage of you. We just didn't want to go there. Now I know some retailers like Target is successfully managing that transition, and there's different pricing, and they do price match guarantee, and they sort of take this approach to, caveat emptor, let the buyer beware. But we just haven't been comfortable doing that. And I think that's because of the industry reputation as a whole and just the amount of distrust, generally speaking, of dealerships. We haven't wanted to entertain that. So that's been our hang up. There's also been a disconnect in pricing between like advertised lease specials and like what the SRP or VDP shows. We'll show the $199 lease online or TV, and then you go to the SRP and it's like $476, and you're like, well, what's the difference, right?
Yeah.
Right. And so, so it wasn't a panacea for us. So we learned a lot of interesting things, but we have one site, our Lincoln site has a digital retailing tool on it only because our Lincoln rep made us put it on.
Sure.
So, and that's a growing actually pressure point for groups like ours. OEMs are really pushing the needle on feeling like it's a requirement. But we feel very strongly that our head's not in the sand on this subject. But we just feel very strongly that it's not as transformative as the industry, right, this second is trying to make it be.
Matt, there are no words truer spoken than I've heard in the last couple of weeks than that right there, which is the pressure is getting to a fever pitch, whether it's your OEM, whether it's just talking heads, whether it's the companies themselves pushing the product or giving it away for free. It isn't required to do business the right way.
Right. Well, I mean, look, we're selling 50 cars a day right now with a general manager. We have one person working the store, and we're selling 50 cars a day, which is about 25-30% of our typical transaction volume.
Right. So you got each GM is doing their own number of car deals in the 50, right? And you are experiencing that across the board, and you're doing it without a DR tool. I mean, I'm sure Lincoln might get a deal once in a while, but it isn't anything major to probably go end-to-end transaction.
Right. And I think the misnomer is these DR tools, as they're framed, are not e-commerce transaction tools. They're just lead generators. They're fancy lead generators with a lot of extra friction. And unfortunately, friction is bad online and causes people to defect and move elsewhere. So I just don't think we take a holistic view of like what's actually happening. And we're like, oh yeah, cool, turn that tool on in 48 hours. If it's that easy, then why do you have 350 salespeople doing the work? I mean, if you've ever sold a car, there's a remarkable amount of back and forth required. Even as good and articulate as you might be, you got to call, or they got to check with their spouse, or they want the yellow one, or they're not sure about lease first buy, maybe a used alternative. Like DR doesn't address any of that. It only addresses the person that knows exactly what they want, assuming the dealership has discounted it already online. That's the only thing that it can do.
Which is what if 10% of people, judging by your data, 10% of people actually engage the tool, how many actually of the 10% fall into the category that are just it's the black Lincoln, that's it. That is it. I'm not. What's the percentage of that? I mean, it's got to be the same 10% of the 10%, which means it's a statistical anomaly. No one gives a shit. No one should care about it. It doesn't matter. But OEMs can't find a way forward without it, because otherwise, what would they have to talk about? What would they be doing? So you worked there, Matt. That's it. I want to go back to this. You were with Nissan North America because I was there. I wasn't with them. I was on the Cobalt contract back in 08, 09 that were shared between Nissan and them. When you think about your day as an OEM, what does it make it easier for you to deal with them now or harder to deal with them now?
Well, look, I got a lot of empathy and respect for the OEMs, no doubt. And as a franchisee, we have a great responsibility and burden or whatever to share and be a good corporate partner. We have a privilege to sell a commodity in basically a monopoly system almost, right? So we have to listen and be proactive. But I think the pressure comes, these organizations are not necessarily great marketing organizations. They're not retailers. They're producers of cars. They have factories all over the world. These are tremendously complex things to build and produce at scale of quality that they're doing. That's all really hard. But a lot of the marketing and advertising decisions are being subletted to the Shift Digitals of the world or agencies who should, in theory, know what the consumer's thinking.
Sure.
And they're not really making the decision. So if you're the e-commerce or the marketing director at Nissan or whoever, you're very ill-equipped to suggest or to demand how dealers, retailers should go to market and operate because you don't have the experience. You came up through the corporate channel probably. You have a different background. You may be tech savvy, but the millions of dollars that the OEMs spend on tier one sites, I'm amazed that there isn't more conversation about how do we grow and emphasize the tier one website, which, by the way, my opinion, strictly my opinion, but I think the best place for a new car shopper to go is the tier one website. I think the tier three sites are nowhere near as good. They do not do as good a job at describing packages, and they don't have emotive pictures of the expedition in the mountains. Even like price, purchase, and lease options are pretty close on the OEM site. They don't have sales tax and it's not penny perfect, but you can get an idea. The last two cars I bought, a Ford and a Jeep, I used the OEM sites exclusively, didn't use any of our digital properties, called the GMs of the stores that I wanted, and I said, hey, order me this car.
That's it. Done.
That's all I did.
Here's the thing, man. You talked about it right here. You said tier three websites, not as good as tier one. The tier three websites are part of what you just talked about, being ill-equipped to talk about doing anything outside of what you already know how to do. So just have your tier one sites, eliminate the twos, if you will, the tier two, make the tier three just the dealer side. But the tier two sites, even these guys try to launch out, can be a bit of a real pain in the regional.
Tier two is going to die. It's already showing that a lot of OEMs are reducing tier two footprints, expenses, funneling websites back to tier one. What we need as an industry, I think, is a greater emphasis on lead production out of the tier one websites and then equitably distributing them based on the franchise network. So it could be the person lives. Maybe it's giving the customer an opportunity to choose which dealership they want to work with, because we have customers outside of our DMA that like doing business with Herr just because we've treated them the correct way over time. So I think having some way to allow consumers to choose would be a good thing. And some do that with, maps and things, but I think that there's a lot of opportunity for that, and a lot of efficiency for ad spend to go directly to Ford.com or wherever else, as opposed to tier one, tier two, and tier three all fighting and bidding against each other on Google and driving the price up.
Right. Exactly. Again, back to the whole thing. Advertising isn't your thing. You're a new car wholesaler. I'd never let my used car wholesaler sit down and tell me how to market my used cars. So it's the same discussion for me, but that's for a different day. Matt, right now with what you're dealing with as a marketing director for 26 stores, I'd like to get an idea of scale on a good month, good day. How many people are in your department? How does it operate?
Yeah, we're a very centralized group. I have two great team members that are, my marketing specialists, if you will. One has more of a graphic design orientation, and one has a more of social media execution, campaign setups, and those types of things orientation. And then it's a very collaborative relationship with the general managers. So the GMs don't report to me and I don't report to them, but we work together to make media planning decisions. I have a copywriter on staff that helps me with TV and radio stuff. We have an independent production house that helps produce traditional media for us. We have an independent media buying company that's a partner, a very key, important partner for us. And then obviously a myriad of vendors that help establish things. And then I have one field rep person that helps me with the Rochester stores that I can't get to as regularly.
So you have it all set up this way, and you work with all these teammates kind of report to you, right? But the GMs, you guys don't. I like the fact that you point that out, man. You don't work for them. They don't work for you, which means it should be a collaboration. Doesn't mean that Matt's coming in and tell us what to do. And it doesn't mean that Matt's going to come in and just be bowled over by what it is that we want to do. It should be, and I find that doesn't happen a lot, right? Obviously, our position in the space is to help people in your position who might even be less staffed than you are keep up with all the data and information and vendors. And so I find a lot when I sit on these calls that no one's like if it's building a campaign or say it's building an SEO strategy, I don't hear so what are the top models you guys are moving? I just hear about what the data tells the other data people to do with the data. And at some point, I believe it is sort of a Moneyball idea, which is you got data guys, but I need ball guys. I need guys that are in the game, guys that are telling me what the score is. Is that a real important part of how you go about framing an every month ad approach, is with these GMs telling you what's the goal, what's the initiative at their space?
Well, I mean, first, I'm taking for granted we have a very stable workforce who's been around for a while. So, and even with respect to my role, many of the GMs I sold cars with together, right? Like, or I was a sales manager with. So we have this sort of shared understanding that I know what they're dealing with. I understand that there's a salesperson sitting in front of them right now asking them, do you know where this extra set of keys are? And their phone's ringing and saying, hey, what's this lease going to be with an outside salesperson? So I'm empathetic towards the challenges that are faced at the store, which makes me more effective because, look, I don't have to deal with that every day anymore. So I can focus entirely on marketing strategy, digital metrics, what's happening, how the world's moving, and then they can lean on me in a respectful way to decode it for them. But I will say that it's a dance, man. Like, sometimes things happen. Like, we'll make a decision that I don't agree with. I got to check my ego sometimes and like let that go, sort of take the broader picture here. And so there's a collaborative team effort. But what's most important, I think, is it cannot be dictated down. It has to be bought in. You have to believe. So if I just say to our network, hey, we're going to do this, that's not going to be very effective. If the team's like, hey, what if we did this? And the GMs are like, yeah, that'd be cool. Now there's like this mutual buy-in, right? And It's like, okay, cool. We can be more effective that way. It's kind of like if I buy you a used car, it's no good. If you buy the same used car, pay the same amount of money, you're going to find a way to sell that one, right? Mm-hmm. So you got to have this like mutual ebb and flow. And we do have, regular meetings, and we're staying on the pulse of things, and we care a lot about market share and sales. So we focus a lot about, unit count that way.
Market share is a big part of the discussion. I think a lot of people just look at the end all result, whatever the trunk money is, whatever they're trying to chase as it, but there's a percentage of that has to come from you gripping just a little bit from outside of that. So again, I think that's a really, really cool focus. Matt, I know you're a busy man. I'm not going to keep taking up more of your time, but sort of as we move forward in this, how are you said you're getting back to doing some creative, some things around this idea. What do you see as the sort of next 30 days of your life? What does it look like in Matt's world to sort of, look, that's assuming a reemergence, which that might even be the case. This what we're dealing with now I might talk to you in 30 days, might be the same thing. I don't know, right? But how are you approaching the next 30 here as we kind of come to the end of April?
Yeah, look, we're ramping things back up. It's easy to turn things off. It's more complicated turning them back on. So we're going to be real busy, making sure that we can execute across the different platforms that we need to do, and continuing to juggle like co-op management and available funds, things of that nature will be changing because of the amount of wholesale changes that have happened. So it'll be busy, but I guess the way I look at least New York State or Western New York, we're thinking maybe May. We're going to finish about 20-25% sales volume for April. We're going to finish maybe 40 or 50% in May. I hope I'm wrong. Like, hopefully it's way more than that, but I think it'll be 40 or 50%, maybe June, 75%, July, maybe, assuming the world doesn't collapse, 90%. So July, August, something. But I think in our market, we're very aware that the retail sector, service economy jobs, hair salons, waiters, waitresses, those types of jobs, obviously have been decimated by this, and you don't get the time back. Right. So like if I'm a hairdresser, I just lost 30% of my income for the year. There's no coming back from that. Right. You can't make more hours in the day, and you can't work more to make up for it. So I think that there's just going to be a pressure on discretionary income over the next 6 months, 12 months, especially in our area. But, this is probably in other areas too, I would suspect. But
well, yeah, absolutely. You brought it up. My mom's actually been a hairstylist for my whole life. She's probably going on 50 years in the job. And I had a conversation with her right when this all happened, and she was panicked. She's like, look, my parents are in their 60s and 70s and whatever. And they're like, look, what am I going to do? And I thought to myself, well, Mom, obviously it's difficult now. But the one thing about this is, as long as you're going to be cool for like the 45 to 60 days, you are call one on day 61. When people can go outside, the first people they're calling are you. So whatever summer plans you had, you can get rid of those. You didn't think you're going to work weekends anymore. You're gonna. So she has a unique opportunity because of the pent up sort of energy to sort of have some, makeup a little bit there. But to your point, man, look, I'm self-employed. I run a small company with everyone who's in this company as a partner in it. So I don't have to worry about furloughs. It's just a matter of, foregoing salary, which I don't really care. I forego salaries. I give discounts to clients so that I'm here when this is over. What's the point otherwise? Yeah. If you were in it for the short term, I guess you get what you get. But you've brought up the word empathy a few different times in our conversation, and I think it's an important part of living in general, but living now. If you don't mind, as is a little bit weird, but is that something that you've developed as you've gotten older, empathy, Matt, or have you always been that sort of a human being? And I only say that because I have not been that sort of a human being. And as I get older, I'm trying to be more of that, and I'm noticing in places I am. So just quickly, empathy,
yeah,
Matt.
Man,
tell me how you got there.
I think it's a bit of a function of aging. I got 4 little kids
Sure.
that are teaching me a lot about that. A quick personal story. My oldest son has Down syndrome. He's 8 years old. And one of his gifts, one of his strengths is empathy. So he's very aware and cognizant of how you're feeling as a human being. And if you're sad, he tries to help lift you up. If you're happy, he'll celebrate with you. So he's very in tune to people's, current emotional states. So that's driven me for sure. And, but secondly, our company and our leadership at our company cares a lot about people. So it's hard unless you're just ignoring it. It's what our company cares about, and it's how we do things. So I can't help but make that a part of how I am. And I agree with you. I think it's a part of being human. And I think it's it's like an unlock to life, and like being able to just, see different viewpoints. And the more you think, I think it is dangerous. You know what I mean? Every 21, 22, I went through it. Like everything's black and white when you're 22, you got all the answers. By the time you're 40, like everything's shades of gray and you might not know anything. Right. So, I think so. I just got to be humble, you know what I mean? And you got to be respectful of other people, and you never know the crosses people are bearing and what they're going through. Like, their spouse might have cancer. Like maybe they're getting a divorce. Maybe they got an addiction they're struggling with. Maybe they lost their job. Like you just don't know. Like there's so many variables of what's impacting people that, you should seek to understand, and then, just try to relate, and try to be forgiving and graceful.
That's what we say all the time. Seek to understand, then worry about whatever happens next. As long as you can understand it, then you can approach it, you can address it, and you can continue moving. Look, man, again, I really appreciate you taking the time. I really do. You've laid out the next 6 months for me. Last question I have for you. In those 6 months, do you see an opportunity for your stores to do things differently? And I mean that from a standpoint of, you talked about turning things back on were harder than turning off. Do you see certain things and certain ways of doing business potentially that won't get turned back on, that maybe were left, that now they're off, you see, hey, we can operate without it? Like, well, anything, because I've been hearing about the hyper change, right? I'm sure you've read it everywhere. Oh my God, business is never gonna be the same. I don't buy any of that. I mean, at all, ever. I think it might for the short term, sure, but long term, as soon as people can go back to going to baseball games, football games, life will return to normal, yeah. I think. How do you think that, do you have any changes that will happen that will stay off?
Look, man, I think consumer behavior change is slow. You're spot on. Like, I think what will happen is the best operators will adopt the Panera or Burger King sort of have it your way approach. So I think whether you want to shop online and take delivery in store, whether you want to go to the store and take delivery at home, whether you want to test drive something at home and take delivery at work, like those types of like flexible arrangements for transacting, but not even just a transaction, like communication patterns, more texting, more social DMs, like that kind of stuff, I think is really where it's going to go. Like I think FaceTime and video chat is a big opportunity for us. And I think we'll test it and learn better now, like over the next 30, 40, 60 days, whatever. Just people get more comfortable with the idea. I mean, I'm on 18 Zoom calls a day now. I wasn't particularly comfortable with it prior to this 30 days ago. And now I'm like, okay, this is how it works. This is how we talk to people. Yeah. So I think we'll see that step change, and the best operators will have all sorts of flexible options of engaging however you want. But I always go back to Grandma Sue in Hamburg, New York. She does not want to be an online sales manager. She doesn't want to transact online. She wants to buy the car from Ron Check, who she's known for 50 years, and she's bought the last 6 cars from, right? So we have 350 salespeople that manage the heck out of their relationships. Kudos to them, testament to them. Like, that's our strength. And maybe that's Western New York, maybe that's old school, maybe we're 10 years behind the curve, and maybe that's all true. But at the end of the day, I think over the next 10 years, that'll still be true, as we go forward.
And here's why. It's already been true for 70 to this point at your group. The idea that you're somehow behind the times, which I've heard, look, man, I live in the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin. So I hear all the time about how I'm not in tune with what the world sees, and that's why my views are what they are. That's not true. I take in culture everywhere I go. I travel a ton. I listen to people. I talk to people. I find that it's interesting that we aren't headed down the road of never going to see a showroom again. But you're right. The best operators will finally latch on to ideas that have existed for quite some time.
But also don't forget, like, franchisees, they're told to build these big Taj Mahals. What do you think a dealer operator wants to do? Like we're not going to abandon these real estate holdings that we have and these beautiful buildings that exist. They may shift and evolve and whatever, but they're not going anywhere.
They can't go anywhere. The people who run your group did not build 3 stores in the last 3 years that cost them $2.5 million minimum across the board. They didn't do that for fun. They didn't do that because they were like, well, how else should I diversify? That's not what that was. And people really, you're right, don't get that. That's part of an OEM relationship, which we definitely do not want to take up your time talking more about that. But so video chats, look, here's how I feel, right? I don't like it. I didn't like it before. I'm not a huge fan of it now because I feel, Matt, if you and I were here in the same room, the energy would be different. There would be a different approach to the conversation. Am I wrong about that, Matt? Or are you finding that to be true now that you're talking with the same people digitally that you were in person?
I just think it's an adjustment. I think it requires time. I canceled our cable and shifted entirely to Apple TVs in my house because I wanted to know what a 25-year-old, how they consumed content. And my wife went through a pretty painful transition as we changed cable, like passive consumption, whatever's on TV is on, and sort of that framework to unlimited choice, pick whatever you want. That transition was difficult for her. And so I watch that transition is not going to happen by choice for a lot of people because they don't want to go through that pain, right? Similarly, the industry, the auto industry, there's going to be this just slow evolution, as we go. Consumer behavior just has to move slow.
Okay, that's what we'll leave it at. Matt says it. I agree with him. Consumer behavior does have to move slow. Typically, technology is far ahead of consumer behavior, but again, that's what we see here, and every day we talk about it. So, Matt, thanks again, man, so much for being on the show. You are a breath of fresh air, my friend, in a time where people can be full of panic and craziness. Here you are. Up in New York talking about, hey, 25% of the business now, 50% of the business then, and hopefully by this time, we'll be back to up and running. So great perspective, man. Keep it up. And again, thanks so much for joining.
Appreciate you, man. Take care.
Folks, as always, you know where to find us. Anywhere you can hear your podcast, you can find this show. Don't forget, check us out on the YouTube channel. If you have any questions for Matt, feel free to reach out to me or him directly. I see him all the time on LinkedIn. Matt, do you do any other social besides that?
Not really in the professional setting, maybe a little Twitter, but come find me. I'm not that.
Yeah, don't. He's not going to tell you the Twitter handle. He's going to have to go find that one. I get that, my friend. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much. Have a great day and enjoy your week.
Okay, take care.